of our personnel, Chuck Coleman, Clint Ballard, and Anthony Paolini, respond on a medical where their actions resulted in saving the life of an individual. And so with that, because it was confirmed through our medical officer, Greg Kennedy, that without their actions, she would have succumbed to her illness. That then in turn triggers not only a certificate of appreciation, but them also receiving a life-saving award from the district. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. And I didn't want to present those to them without you guys being made abreast of it. So that will actually occur. Unfortunately, it would have occurred for all three individuals today, but Captain Chuck Coleman is on an extended vacation. So I have to catch up with him when he returns. But that's my intent. I can read the certificate to the board if they so please. And I see some shaking of heads, yes. So I'll I'll just go ahead and read it. On July 10th at 10:56 p.m. in the town of Rodeo, Engine 75C responded to a patient suffering from anaphylaxis. The responding crew provided the patient airway support with oxygen and administered epinephrine and Benadryl. These immediate actions prevented the patient from going into respiratory arrest that would have resulted in a cardiac arrest. And so the fire district commends your actions and continued dedication to your profession. So that is a very short synopsis of truly what occurred and what has to go into timing, absolute crew continuity, and being able to make those actions come out in a positive result. The individual was unresponsive upon the crew's arrival, and she was talking and responsive by the time she left on the ambulance. So like I said, their actions, the result would have been, if they had not been able to react the way they did, the results would have confirmed from the health officer would have been different. So that's all I have on that.
Who was the third? It was Chuck and Anthony and who else?
It was Clint Ballard, engineer Clint Ballard.
Do you have any contact with, or they have any contact with the patient post incident?
I'm not aware of that.
I was just gonna, and we could take this offline, but although it would require board approval, I think that's something that's this award ought to be get a little visibility with the public by way of maybe a little media advisory, which I'd be happy to help you with if the board agreed. We'd have to think about the HIPAA thing and how we word it so that the universe is at least 20,000 people, which don't live in Rodeo. But I think it's something that the public ought to know about.
That's why I'm bringing it to this special meeting.
I don't know if there's any other thoughts about that.
Yeah, there should be some type of accommodation that, you know, rises to the level of saving a life. Yeah, I think Steve has a good idea.
I don't know if we should, I'll ask Andrew, I don't know if we should take this offline or not, but I mean, the thing that I would see in my mind's eye is the crew is with a recovered patient, and there's a nice photo, and so she's agreed to the publicity and news release.
I agree, only if she, you know, consents naturally, but, you know, if she agrees to something like that, that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, I guess that counts as direction, but not necessarily board approval on that. So
I can work with you offline, Chief, if we want. It sounds like nobody disagrees.
Yeah, I'll follow whatever the board's direction is.
Okay. Yeah, I think, if you want to work offline for that to see if, that more it's internal managing, I guess. And then whatever that comes up from that can be sort of presented to the board, and then we can formalize the motion to do a press release or something, um, or something like that. Even posting on the website even.
Posting on the website would be awesome.
That was my plan, was to put it on the website.
Oh, perfect.
But I didn't want to put it on the website and then you guys be the last to know.
I appreciate it. And I also wanted to take the moment to thank the staff. I mean, that shows the incredible dedication and hard work that each and every one of them bring to this district. And without their quick thinking and ability to do their job, none of the lives would not be saved, and the safety of the community is number one with them, and we greatly appreciate that. Okay. Oh, and just so the record reflects, please note that Director Thorpe and Director Prather are now joining us for the meeting. Okay. Did anyone have any other comments for the staff report? Okay. Hearing none. Next item is public communications. Public comment on any item of interest to the public that is within the board's jurisdiction will be heard. The board may limit comments to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. Public comment will be allowed on each specific agenda item prior to board action thereon. Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no raised hands and I did not receive any emails.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the workshop strategic planning. Item A, discussion. I apologize. I don't quite remember what verbiage we had modified this to. Kim, did you happen to have a record of that? And if you don't mind reading it out.
So I kind of scribbled my notes. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it, but it was discussion regarding potential challenges and the potential strategic plan topics.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and that's section A, and we'll break out into the subsections. But before we get started, Chief, how do you recommend we do this? Is it going to be a quick report on each item, then we discuss, or how would you like to see this happen?
Well, I was thinking this was going to be completely board driven from the ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee kind of has morphed into the entire board being included in this, but these were just basically ticklers for you to discuss and decide whether these would be the dive-in items that we would gather information on and to bring back to a future meeting.
Okay.
So in other words, go through each of the topics, decide, is this something that you want to see on a more in-depth workshop? And that's another reason that we kept this meeting fairly short today, instead of, because we didn't have, the board hadn't decided on a full direction yet in order to be able to direct staff on what information needed to be brought back to the board on each of the topics.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. Okay, with that, I guess we can just roll through these topics and sort of have an open discussion. First one that is obviously a challenge and always a consideration, district finances. I think that would be a gimme in terms of items that we have to discuss. I think in terms of scope, we should absolutely see, what the budget will look like in an economic downturn, and whether, given the funding sources we have now, what kind of impact that'll have going forward. I think planning for the worst, hoping for the best it's kind of a strategy that I like to hop on board with. But what's the board's thoughts on this?
Well, I think that I kind of agree with, I think I agree with you. I think it would be prudent for us to be anticipating revenue stream reductions. I know in my day job, we don't really know for sure, but we are planning as though in the coming tax year, not this one, but the next one and beyond, there likely will be revenue reductions. And so I think it would be prudent for us to be anticipating that and sort of framing our planning process based on some, I don't know how to do this personally, but based on some assumptions about reduced revenues.
Any other comments from the board about district finances in the future?
Yeah, I agree with that approach.
Okay. Director Covington or Director Prather, did you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
And just for clarification, how far out, how many years out would you want to see that? Let's say I put together a staff report of projections. How far out? 5 years, 2 years?
I would think 5 years.
The agenda anticipates 5 years. That seems reasonable to me. I mean, I think it's kind of a crapshoot regardless, right?
It's, yeah, without a crystal ball.
Are there any experts we can draw on to give us any advice?
Yes, I would defer to Katachu. He's already on, basically on payroll, so.
Yep.
Yeah, he in the contract is the financial aspect of projections and that sort of thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we can absolutely just levy this over to MRG under the existing contract, which probably you were going to do anyway.
It's absolutely within his scope.
Perfect. So yeah, we would love to see that. But I think also in the realm of finances, I think one thing to look at is that where it would be? Yeah, like alternative means of income. I think we should take some time to just even brainstorm. If it comes up to be nothing, it comes up to be nothing. But I think it's worth it for us to think, okay, what are other districts doing to supplement their revenues and generate income? I mean, it's worth it to just have that discussion of where else can we tap into to offset any anticipated losses or to get more income to better serve our district. So I think that's definitely something worth adding in there. Just a little bit of brainstorming. Okay. Any other item for district finances? Any public comment? I mean, I do invite members of the public that are joining us today to raise your hand as they come in, as thoughts come in. This is a workshop. I'm not like a normal board meeting. Imagine us sitting in a round table versus up on the meeting bench. So feel free to chime in and raise your hand if you want to provide any input.
I have Jerry Short.
Okay.
Good morning. How's everyone doing on this beautiful Saturday?
Hey, Jerry.
Good morning.
I just would, since we're talking about the financial stuff, I mean, we're a lot of emphasis is being put on, the unknown, and like the chief mentioned, and we hear in every financial proceeding and all of my districts and cities alike, without a crystal ball, you never know what's going to go on, and we can anticipate and plan for, and I believe what Director Hill's referring to is a 2% downturn. But really, what are we looking to afford, and what model, are we looking to, a level of service, a depth? You know, is there any improvement? And I would hope that that would be kind of the basis for any financial considerations, is exactly what does the district look like in 5 years as well. And I know that's why we're here this morning, but you know, that's all in turn with revenue as well. And then, you know, like I mentioned in the last board meeting, you know, also the affordability of the recruitment and retention that we're kind of facing right now. Doing the math in my head last night, we've lost 10 people in the last 7 years. And they've all been from our recent with less than 8 months on to up to 5 years on. And they've all left to neighboring departments. So I just think that that's something that we need to highly consider as well, or at least entertain the thought of what does the district look like as well.
Okay. Thank you so much for the comment. Any other public comments?
Getachew had his hand up, but it went down, so I didn't know if he still wanted to make a comment.
I think, good morning. I think the previous speaker outlined there would definitely be a downturn on revenue, but not significantly from my expectation, mainly because your revenue is the majority of almost, 90% of your revenue is driven from property tax. What the board can do is, because of this situation, is to work with the chief, to look for other, revenue streams, like with grants. So I think the district is very weak in writing grants, and they need, some strong person or some professionals, to really look for other resources from an outside. But in terms of the majority of your revenues are coming from property tax and Measure O, and which is not going to be, probably there would be a 2% or 3% downturn. Other than that, it's really on the financial side, it is, incumbent upon the board to give the chief a direction to look other sources, like from the state, from the Fed, from other sources. That's my recommendation. With what you have, probably we can anticipate a 2-3% revenue down.
Tachi, can you say that last part again? What about a revenue? What'd you say again?
I said, probably there would be a 2 or 3% downturn, in revenue, because we could, because of the property tax is almost 2 years lagging. And if let's say the housing market started, going down, that means, there could be some foreclosures. And even if those foreclosures happen, because these properties are owned, the debt holders are the banks, still, the residents would, the district would get its revenue. So for that person, for that reason, it would be, a 2 years lag. So therefore, it is, we should anticipate about 2 to 3% downturn.
So what fiscal year would that be?
That would be that starting, 21, 21, 22, 22, 23. And then depending upon, we can really look, at a macro level, the economic situation, and at micro level also, and see, the neighboring, districts. And then we can really, project by how much, we would be impacted, revenue wise. At the same time, we have to also look at our expenditures. And so you have to look, the expenditure as well as the revenues, and then come up, with the 5 years projections. We already anticipated with a flat, but now we can really factor in about 2%, 3% down.
Perfect. Thank you. So the 2% down, and that's just based on the fact that our revenues do not get impacted by the things that are being impacted, right?
Absolutely, because we're not, I mean, getting our revenues from sales tax or utility tax or any, probably the diff would be flat because there may not be some development coming to the cities. Other than that, the majority of your revenues are property tax, and which is also the measure of. So there would not be a huge, I mean, impact to the district.
What about our CPI? I know the downturn in the economy, the CPI is going to be affected, but do you think we'll still have some sort of ability to increase those fees?
Yes, but if you look, I mean, the consumer index now really is going down. I mean, it didn't really, I mean, we were not really impacted by inflation. Rather, we were impacted by the macroeconomic and the pandemic. So that effect is also insignificant from my point of view.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Getachew?
Well, not a question so much, but it's a comment process sort of comment, or maybe it is a question for the board itself. Should we be asking for some sort of a report, a little more detailed based on what Getachew just sort of anecdotally provided that could be part of our planning documentation going forward?
I think Chief mentioned that he'd work with Getachew to make a staff report. Am I right in saying that? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Well, is that a yes or?
Yeah, I said yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. So, thank you, Getachew. Any other questions for the board about district finances? Okay. Hearing none, let's go to the next item. Opportunities and constraints regarding revenues versus expenditures. I think this item really just looks at where we can save versus where we can cut. I guess that kind of overlaps with district finances. I think like a good kickoff would be something that Getachew mentioned about grants and seeking those out. I know Chief Craig has been active in getting and trying to get more of those. But I don't know. I remember you mentioned before, Chief Craig, that you were going to work with sort of a third-party agency to help us with applying for grants and whatnot.
Yes, we still currently work with an agency that's out of Texas, Vickers and Associates, and that's mostly for grants pertaining to equipment. Actually, excuse me, was just in contact with FEMA and OES on Thursday. I did a Zoom meeting with them in regards to monies that will be provided from the federal government and from the state for reimbursements and in just being able to handle COVID related expenditures moving forward.
Perfect. I think one thing to think about is with the new development, will that affect our expenditures? I mean, it's done it already with the purchase of the large 100-foot ladder truck. It's affected that in the sense that we need more equipment, but is there any other anticipated constraints that are going to happen with our expenditures, or any opportunities to increase revenues with that new development?
As far as I mean, you can't hold developers, how do I say it, hostage any longer to provide funding. They have to do it basically, on their own, through conversations. we don't have, we don't have a CFD that was for basically like for the waterfront area. So any extra revenue that came in would be in the form of developer impact fees or any donation that the larger developers would want to make to the district.
Okay. And I guess, I throw it back to the board. Is this something that we want to expand more on, or get for us to talk a little bit more about, or is this just something that, it can be deemed redundant, or, it doesn't add to our discussion about a strategic plan? Or if you had more questions about what this item entails, I'd leave it back to the board if you want to make comments.
I guess what I'm envisioning, again, this is sort of gets to process, but I'm envisioning that perhaps this is yet another page of report in what turns out to be ultimately our strategic plan.
And staff will be looking for direction from the board on each one of these topics on, or is it something that the board is going to want to continue to entertain and want additional information on, or is it an item that they don't want any additional information on and they don't want to dive into? And then, we'll want to try to break these into small bites. I can't see being able to tackle, I think you have like at least 8 or 9 items there, be able to tackle them in the depth that I think the board would want at just one meeting.
I mean, I'm okay with just leaving this item out, because it kind of rolls into if it's all about revenues, expenditures, it falls back into the district finances part of the things. And I think that it would be a little bit redundant to have both item A and item B, because it sounds like our financial projections are very looked at constraints on revenues. I think we just have to look at the other elements of that in the expenditures part of things, and just emphasize that in the district finances of what kind of expenditures are we anticipating, whether they're one-time or if they're long-term ones. But I leave it to the rest of the board if I interpreted that correctly, or if they think that that's the appropriate move.
Well, Chair Gabriel, my only concern would be that when we get into like the nitty gritty stuff like finances, that we be a little bit more meticulous, because if we're making a 5-year plan, this is not something that we're probably going to be able to come back and tweak on a regular basis. So, I mean, I think all things aren't equal, but when we come to like finances and things of that nature, we should probably be a little bit more specific about what's coming in and what we think is going to need to go out on those particular items.
Sure. So, which are you looking at the district finances part of things as the more bigger picture, larger scope, and that the opportunities and constraints can be more of the day-to-day operational type of items?
Yeah, I do. I think so. And I think that obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but I think the better we planned, the stronger position we could possibly be in, whether things go really well or whether they don't go as well as we hoped.
Okay, I agree with that. I mean, one thing that's very real, and that I think we as the district are apprised to know this, is the turnover rate. I think that's definitely something that we have to plan. I know the chief does everything in his power to help offset some of the overtime that comes from trying to fill a vacancy, but it's a reality that we have to, one, budget for, and two, kind of think about in our process here, especially for strategic planning. I see Getachew has his hand up. I don't know if we want to hear from him really quickly.
Yes.
I think you're still on mute, Getachew.
Unmute. 84% of your, expenditure is on personnel. That's fixed. So now I think the thought process that has to go in this planning is about that 16% of your revenue, your expenditure. So what do you do with that fixed cost? Can you change it or can you do anything about it? So that's why I put them in that.
Oops.
Sorry, I think we lost him for a second. Getachew, if you can unmute and repeat that last part after you mentioned 16%.
Yeah, so the 16% is the room that, when it comes to the expenditure side, we have to talk that because if this, trend continues for another 5 years, what do you do, at a minimum to run the operation? On the other hand is you have to think about that 84% of your expenditure. What can you do strategically? Those are the two variables you have to look very closely.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. I think that's something that we should discuss is the one half, or not even one half, the 84%. We have to discuss about that expenditure, the employee costs. And that's where that discussion about, acknowledging that we have turnover. And then the other part of that 14 or that 16%, we have to come to terms like, is there anything else there left to give? And, we've gone down this path before. We've had these discussions and, that might be it, or that might not be it. So I think this is something worth sorry, I lost my voice. Worth discussing further if the board agrees with me to come back to this. I think the advice that or the direction that we should give to staff should be that we would like to see where we can better plan our expenditures and break them up both by, where that 14% goes or that 16% goes and where that 84% goes, and look at what we can do to better offset that or reduce it or, make it a long-term viable plan or projection for that. I don't know if that's enough direction for staff to do something, or if the board agrees with me on that.
Well, I kind of think, and this gets back to process again, but I'm assuming that we're going to engage in this process to develop the board's 5-year strategic plan, which I'm assuming would culminate with some guidance to staff about board direction, things we want the board to do. So I don't know, it seems to me that we can't have the discussion about the percentages and the allocations and that kind of thing without addressing the challenges. So we addressed one challenge, and that is we identified one challenge, and that is the likely reduction in revenue in the out years. Maybe not year 1 in our 5-year plan, but according to Getachew, year 2 and beyond. So that's one challenge that's going to inform that discussion, Andrew, that you're referring to. I mean, we've sort of, I think we've gotten on the table another big one, and that is thanks to Jerry, and that is recruiting and retention, which is it's probably my second or third concern in terms of challenges we face, which is going to impact how we address the financial situation. I think it's coming up on the agenda, but I think the 800-pound gorilla or whatever it is the call volume and complexity and how that's going to change over the next 5 years. And all that's going to play into talking about the budget, but I think we got to my way of thinking, we have to get all the challenges on the table. So that because they all sort of are, they're like one of those little, remember those puzzles like what I had when I was a kid, where you had to move, there's one open space and you got to move it all around. Well, they all kind of work together, right? So I don't know, we can't really discuss budget guidance until we, to my way of thinking, until we identify the challenges and have a better understanding how they work together.
I think one overarching challenge that's always going to be present for us is just budget management and budget allocation and where we spend that those funds. And I think one thing we need to look at is, you know, the information behind that, whether we as a district are in line moving forward. So in terms of being a challenge, I think that's just always an ongoing challenge for any special district. And that's why I think it's worth it to look a little bit closer at the trends that have been going on. I'm not saying that there's anything, you know, nefarious or anything like that going on. I'm just saying that it's worth the board to take a look at sort of both, not only what we were before we overhauled our budget, but also after, and see how the numbers were and that sort of thing for our discussion on opportunities and constraints on the budget. Sorry, my dogs.
Well, I'd like to know if there are any consistent threads running through the recidivism issue.
What do you mean recidivism?
Well, if we're losing staff over a period of what was it said, over 10 years, or over 7 years, we've lost 10 staff. Was that what I heard?
Yeah, we've lost more than half of our firefighters. I guess it's all firefighters, probably one rank or another, in the last 7 years.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any common thread running through that.
We don't pay them enough. We didn't give them a raise for 10 years. I mean, that's my thinking.
So they're being paid more where they're going.
Well,
Yep.
Before we jump into that, I think Mr. Short is raising his hand, and maybe he can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, thank you. And Director Hill, thank you for that acknowledgement. And Director Thorpe, so yeah, to clarify, so in that, those numbers, I include the grant-funded people that were hired in 2014-15 under the SAFER grant. And at that time, you know, many of them did leave unexpectedly due to financial challenges prior to Measure O. But we did have some of those folks, in fact, return and then leave once again. And I would say, and I've had this conversation with others, and you know, I speak to my members on their way out, as the chief has, you know, done as well, and they may be a little bit more candid with me than they would be with the chief, just because they want to leave on the best of terms, as you know, you always want to leave with any employer. But with that said, the pay, as I've mentioned before, is not really their top priority. I can speak from personal experience. You know, when you enter into the fire service and you say have like academy classmates or, you know, your friends that you tested with, and you all get hired somewhat together, whether it's at the same department or not, you know, you kind of, it's a competition. I know for myself, I have a group of friends that we went through college together, our Firefighter 1 Academy. We all got hired the same year in 2001. And, you know, we've maintained our friendships, and we're all firefighters in agencies throughout the Bay Area. And you look at, and you kind of compare to where your career has gone or not. And so I'll use myself as example. I started with the Pinole Fire Department as a paid professional firefighter in 2001. And in 2013, I came over to Rodeo-Hercules as a lateral. And in that time frame that I was with the city of Pinole, I partook just because of, again, being a small department, financial struggles. The common theme for the first 6 years of my career was whether or not I was going to get a pink slip. And then from there on, there was no forward or upward ability to move forward in the career. And where I personally believe that, you know, after a 30-year career, you can break that up and, you know, go through different ranks, become good, comfortable, and kind of figure out where you want to go. But when you don't have those opportunities readily available, and you're looking at your 30-year career, and let's say it's 15 years before the next guy is, or, you know, the next employee is possibly set to retire, and that's the only way you're going to get some movement. And then you call back on your friends and you look back and you say that, man, they promoted twice already. And like, again, comparing myself, in 12 years, I had really no opportunity. Now, breath of fresh air, I come over to Rodeo-Hercules. I'm afforded the ability to teach an academy for 9, you know, new hires, got promoted to engineer, and then, you know, unplanned and just the way things work, also was able to promote to captain. But looking at, you know, where I sit now in the department, I'm tapped out. There's nowhere for me to go if I wanted to go any further, based on, we just don't have those positions available. And for instance, our battalion chief is not set to retire for up to, you know, another 4 years. So if you're truly looking to move forward, as most of us are in our careers, whether it's in our industry or, you know, the private sector, you want to have those opportunities. So I think the biggest common thread is the lack of opportunity. And when you're limited by the size of the organization you are, and that's really, I think, the biggest hurdle we're facing. We're going to continue to grow Hercules with their development. Rodeo is very minimal, but we're going to continue to increase our call volume and our need, but we're still going to only be able to be a 2-station department when we possibly need to be 3. We possibly need to look at being up to like 26 personnel and have more opportunity. But being that, you know, we're limited on what our revenue stream is, I think a lot of our folks, especially now that they have to go, you know, longer and longer due to them being in a different retirement system, they see the opportunity not here and pursue it elsewhere. And that in turn is a lot more appealing to them. And they want that, as the chief has described, they want that full experience. And, you know, it's no ding against the Rodeo-Hercules Fire District. It's just, we are hampered just purely by our size. And, you know, that's where it comes down to. And, you know, people they want to start their careers, they want to start their families, they want to establish themselves as young adults. And, you know, they have a hard time doing that. And then they see other opportunities, and there's nothing that we can really do to sway them from a Fremont, from a Oakland, El Cerrito, you know, and these are actual agencies that our people have left: San Francisco, Sacramento, Vallejo, you know, they're going everywhere. And so it's not really, you know, one department that's got all the bells and whistles. It's shoehorned the market, so to speak. It's just, they see more opportunity. And I believe that is, you know, I know that is what they're lacking.
Aren't there other districts that are similar size to ours that have addressed this issue, or solutions that they apply?
Yes, they have. And it usually involves going to the larger district or looking at the ability to combine a bunch of the small ones. So throughout Marin County, they've done, you know, several consolidations of like-sized districts to become larger districts. And I'll tell you, you know, working side by side with Confire, as you know, our neighboring district, that's who all of our young folks are looking up to. I mean, myself included. I tested with them throughout my early 20s and my late teens when I was trying to get into the job, and I've watched them just grow and grow. And I have, you know, one of my good friends and roommates that I was referring to, he's an officer over there now, and you know, those our folks are looking at it, and then it's a little disheartening at times when you work next door to the land of opportunity, if you will, and they feel like they're kind of hampered, you know, in-house. So the short answer is yes, they've looked at that and solved those issues with combining the these smaller districts into one.
Tag on to Mark's question, I can tell you that from my day job, one of the things that we do, and we are not alone in Confire, we conduct lateral academies where we recruit people from actively recruit firefighters from other jurisdictions and bring them in, and they are so willing to join Confire that they are willing to go through an academy, go through a probationary period of a year, and start pretty much at the bottom. We just graduated an academy of 5 firefighter paramedics last week.
Yeah, and
so we're not the only jurisdiction out there doing that. So I mean, that's just one example of how other jurisdictions are actively recruiting away our people.
Yeah, and to just add to that, I have a close friend that was in that academy, Director Hill, and truth be told, he left Moraga Orinda, and having been with them for just over 10 years, and saw that the fact that even in their organization, and I represent those members out there as well, he saw a lack of upward mobility and promotability and a more opportunity. And when it comes down to it, the younger firefighters that are coming through, they want to rock and roll, they want to live the dream, and they want to fight fire, they want to have all the bells and whistles that are out there. And whether it's a sign of the times, the instant gratification, or whatever, but we can't hold a candle to that. And so it's tough. And like agencies they're grabbing good people. And every time we lose somebody, it's a hard pill to swallow. There's a financial cost to it because we invested time in them, and then also just the personal relationship and the work ethic that you got from that person. And we've been fortunate that we've hired such good people, but when they leave, it's a little bit of a gut check, and it takes a lot out of the crews, because all right, here we go again. How long is this person gonna stay? And then you start getting into that, and it kind of it affects morale eventually with some people. Others, they don't mind, but when you lose those good people in key positions, and they were they had buy-in and they were participating members, it's detrimental, and it takes its toll eventually.
So it's a situation where we stay small at our own peril.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's really, what is the future of a small agency? There's always the struggle. We are not doing anything alone. We currently rely with Battalion 7 agreement in place, even the revised agreement now, since late 2011, we can't do it by ourselves. And when I came on in Pinole, we were 1 station, and we had five firefighters on duty every day, and then we split to 2 stations. And us and Rodeo-Hercules, we were still running 1 engine company, was still a 2-person. And we used to laugh and make jokes and about, oh, we can do with 2 what you guys do with 3, and vice versa, and back and forth. But to think that we were still doing that in 2012, it's crazy to think about, when the safety and everything else. So it's just that we cannot, I don't think that there's great success in attempting to be a standalone district when we heavily rely on all of our partners to make our jobs easier and to make us successful on a daily basis. So I think that that's one consideration that should be brought forward with all of this, is just the standalone future of the district itself. And if that is something, and I know that there's an agenda item, and we're going to get to it, but that is something that we seriously need to be thinking about too, because it could answer a lot of the financial burden questions, and could solve a lot of issues without us having to really navigate through every single one of these stones and overturn them.
Director Gabriel, my thought on this is just one more item for us to add to our, list of strategic planning considerations or challenges is recruiting and retention. I don't think we can solve it today.
Okay, yeah, I think we can add that onto the list of recruiting and retention. So I think we do need to give staff a direction for this, of what information we want. I mean, some of the obvious stuff is just sort of incoming, outgoing. I know there's usually outgoing interviews and that sort of thing. I don't want to necessarily get into the privy stuff, but maybe a summary of those items would be helpful for us to look at what's going on and why people are leaving, as well as sort of just any data that we have about that. Any other items that the directors want to see?
I agree with getting some kind of executive summary from the chief and his staff about this, because I think it would inform our thinking. I'm not sure. In my tenure, I've never really heard anything, I don't think even anecdotal about this. And I think it would help to inform our thinking, not only about, the 5-year strategic plan and any direction to staff that comes out of that, but it would help to inform our thinking about decisions we're making all the time about, the one that we made in the last year about the pay increase, payment of certain members of the staff, the chief, for example, and a lot of other things. So I think it'd be very useful to have regardless, beyond even the 5-year planning process.
Chair Gabriel, can I add a question in there?
Sure.
So in regards to Director Hill's comment on the salary increases, I just need a little bit more depth on that. Are we looking at when you're looking for the positive, the negative? I'm a little. That's to Director Hill.
Sorry, it was on another screen. Well, I mean, this is just Steve Hill's thoughts, but I would think it would be useful for the board, this board member, and maybe others, to have some kind of an executive summary from you about what and I'm not talking about it could, I suppose, have, attachments by way of exit interviews and that kind of thing, if that was helpful. I don't know, I can't judge that, but it'd be interesting for me to know, why do we lose people? Why do we keep people very high level? And what are the ramifications of the experience we're having relative to recruiting and retention? I mean, I think the board would find it very useful to know when we're making decisions about contracts, for example, what our recruiting challenges are, what are our retention challenges, what are the impacts, what are the things that are causing us to have those challenges, what are the positives. I think that would be very useful, and that could be a fairly, I don't know, probably not a simple topic, but to my way of thinking, for the board's purposes, a couple-page executive summary of those challenges and opportunities, what the situation is relative to recruiting and retention, to me would be a very useful thing to know. It might even be something that would be useful to be briefed out to us on a regular basis. I'm not saying monthly, but maybe quarterly or semi-annually, something like that, because I'm not so sure I've ever really heard a report about recruiting and retention challenges. And we've made some fairly big decisions about pay and that sort of thing that, of course, impact that in the last year. That's my thoughts.
And then if I could just roll back to Vice President Short's comments and the direction I believe his comments were leading to. I agree with everything that he said, and also with I believe where Director Hill is going in regards to retention and those challenges. As a small district, when the municipal services review study came out several different times, and the last one was, I believe, like 4 years ago. Each time the conclusion of that was consolidation of the smaller departments. I think each one of these items that we have listed out, basically A through F, with some type of if we look at a consolidation effort, they almost become a moot point, because each one of those challenges could be solved with some type of consolidation. If we were to join a larger department, we would then be able to address each one of those items more thoroughly and better serve the public and our personnel by being members or being part of a large organization. So that's just kind of food for thought. It is even possible that we take, G on your agenda, and that gets kind of moved to the top, and that is kind of the first challenge that, or not challenge, the first item that we look at and look at more in depth, and all the way to the point of, even just seeing if Contra Costa Consolidated Fire would even be interested in us consolidating with them, as we haven't even, broached that. And there's been some cursory talks about it, but I think it needs to be done in a more formal manner to find out if it's even viable. That was just my thoughts.
Well, what does that process look like, Chief?
I've never personally been through a consolidation. I think it could be navigated, but I would need direction from the board to be able to, even start those talks.
And I kind of want to ask Mr. Pierrota, is this something that can be made with a simple direction to the chief to at least just sort of approach Confire, or should we do a motion in order to authorize the chief to approach Confire?
My recommendation is that it be a formal action of the board.
Okay, and we wouldn't be able to do that here, right?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Hey, Andrew.
Yes.
My thought on this is, we're talking about challenges, and that's sort of what the agenda envisioned us doing. And it seems like what's been brought up now is maybe it could be characterized as a potential solution to the challenges. I don't know. But it seems to me that it would be good for us to continue to working through the agenda, identify those challenges, which might lead us to a variety of conclusions. One of them might be that we should consider some kind of a, direction to pursue consolidation, I don't know, talks or whatever would entail, I don't know. But I mean, I guess all I'm saying is it's long-winded, but I guess I'm saying I think it'd be helpful for me at least, and maybe others, to sort of get the big picture of the challenges that we face for our strategic planning on the table.
I agree. The only reason why I asked that was just sort of, when we get to item G, we know if we even have that power to bring up. But I agree that, we have to finish going through these challenges and go through this exercise so we can make informed decisions as to what we want to see next steps.
What just on that note, Chief, what's the department feel on consolidation? How would the department, the rank and file, the chief, how do you guys feel about consolidation?
Well, I think just like Vice President Short was saying, it does definitely lead to our retention problem. It's pretty difficult to work next door to someone that has everything, especially they have all these programs that allow for that upward mobility. And even if you don't want to have upward mobility, at least you have programs that you can put your efforts into that, makes your job, or just like not going to work every day, because they're so rewarding to you, whether it's, their helicopter program, their water rescue program. I can just go on and on with what is available to the personnel at Con Fire. And we just don't have that ability here to be that far reaching and to be able to, have those type of in-depth programs that they offer over there. I mean, all the way to, they have explorers and they're starting a brand new hand crew. I mean, like I said, I can go on and, reaching out into the high schools and having those junior firefighters that we've talked about here for years. They already have that program in place. So as far as our personnel here, I think they absolutely relish the idea of us being able to be part of a bigger program or a bigger department.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other speaker cards about this item?
I have Jerry Short.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the chief's last comment and kind of at Director Covington's inquiry. Being the elected representative for the Rodeo-Hercules firefighters, it's come up in discussion and their overall feeling. And I'd say that off the cuff, I'm probably at a 98% approval rating with that topic of consolidation. And I think that even once the membership, was abreast that this was, even if this was a, given direction by the board to really entertain or pursue looking at the viability of it, and it was viable, I think we would probably halt any further retention issues at the moment, because, they're with, of course, everything that's going on in the world with the COVID situation, the hiring processes have slowed down and the academies aren't being planned out like they had been. But as people get used to doing everything remotely and, figure out the social distancing of academy processes and whatnot, they are, starting to ramp up. And I've seen, local cities now are submitting how it kind of used to be, an interest card. So once that they have those things figured out in that process, they're going to have those people already in the queue ready to go again. So I think that, if this was a direction, like I said, again, that was truly given by the board and it was something we were heading down and it looked promising, I think it would stop any retention issues that we have. And then hopefully, if it was something that was to come to fruition, maybe even keep the next two hires, in place, so that we don't continue to kind of bleed, if you will, slowly. So it's well received.
Chair?
Yes.
Hey, I was without audio until right now, so I've been out of the loop. It was garbled. I don't know what I did, but I ungarbled everything, so I'm now able to participate. I just caught the last of what Chief Craig said and what the union rep said, and I'd like to catch up on where we are as far as the discussion.
What do you mean catch up? Like
Just what brought up the going to Con Fire as opposed to doing something within our district? Are we tell me where we are. I missed the first hour and I apologize for that.
Okay. I'll just do a quick rundown, if the board wouldn't mind. We talked about what brought up the discussion was the high turnover rate. The high turnover rate was due to lack of opportunity associated with a smaller district. As was presented by Mr. Short, as well as agreed by Chief Craig, and I think the board didn't necessarily say yay or nay, but just was open to at least hearing the discussion, but we want to go through the challenges first before really committing one way or another, or even deciding to explore that direction. Does that kind of summarize Cliff Notes?
That does, and I appreciate that. That gives me the opportunity to put forth an idea that might make things.
Director Prather, you're muted again. If you could hit the unmute. Director Prather, you might want to try dialing in with your home phone or cell phone in case the computer audio isn't working out for you. It's a great backup.
Yeah, I got the mute and I'm talking now, and then
You're muted again, Director Prather.
Yeah, that's fine. I want to go.
He was saying he was finished with his comments.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if he was actually finished. Okay. With that, so I think we're still on B. I know we jumped around a little bit, but this is a workshop, so I'm not quite as strict on scope of discussion topics. So keeping on with the trend, though, of just moving forward, service demand assessment. So I think this is a pretty big topic, especially considering the amount of development that's going on. Did any directors have any ideas about the challenges that we face with our service demand?
I'll jump in and I'll just say this about that. This is the one that, for better or for worse, always comes to mind first for me. I mean, if there's anything that keeps me awake at night when I'm thinking about our little district, it is all that development out there that has been going on and is going on and is poised to kick off with hundreds and hundreds of new residents, and the potential over the next 5 years to likely have some kind of intermodal transportation center, and the impacts that all of that, and no doubt more, will have on not only the volume of the incidents we are called upon to respond to, but also the complexity of them, which I think is it naturally increases, that complexity increases anyway. But I think in our particular case, and I'm especially thinking of the intermodal transportation center, I think the complexity of what we're called upon to do is going to increase as well. And I really have, I guess I have an advantage because of my day job, I can go and look at the call volume and I can look at the incidents, but I honestly don't do that too much for us. And I don't really have a good sense of what the evolution of that sort of call volume and complexity looks like to guide my thinking over the course of the next 5 years. I'd like to have some kind of expert input. And again, I'm not looking for crazy detailed analyses, but some kind of executive summary of where we think that's going across the next 5 years, because that, like the revenue stream and the recruiting and retention issues, has to inform this board's thinking. And I'd like to have more information about that.
I agree. In terms of getting that information, that Wildan report that we did, that shows some impact of what they show the sort of developer impact fees and how that impacts. Did our study include that particular development, or was it just more of a broad-based approach to readjust the amount of diff fees we get?
No, it was for the entire district. It wasn't focused on a particular area, and they used the building of the new fires. So they use what we feel are going to be necessary needs in the next 5 years. That's what they base the increase in the diff fees on.
So that report talks a little bit about the challenges that we would face in terms of service demand.
Yes, but there's part of me, that service demand, that was kind of the old reality. And, we talk about transient population. So it used to be that, to me, that, when people got up in the morning and went to work every single day, we'd see that population decline within the district. I don't think in the future, we're going to see that same type of decline as more and more people start to work from their homes. So we're not going to see that transient population where we have a decrease in population during the week and then an increase in population on the weekend. I think there's going to be a flattening of that. I think you're going to see a more constant amount of populace within the city and the district throughout the day and throughout the week. So we won't see that downturn. What that equates to then is the call volume. Call volume will then stay more the same without a decrease that you see normally during your weekdays, just due to the fact that people are going to be at home more.
Okay. Have any other district engaged in sort of that kind of study that Director Hill was discussing about impact and sorry. Yeah. Are you aware of any sort of study or something along those lines that any other district has done to show sort of the impact that kind of development, as well as integrating the mention that you about the transient versus stay-at-home population?
No, I'm not aware of any right now. I'm sure other districts or other departments are looking at it as this becomes more and more the trend.
Okay. Any other board members wish to comment on service demand assessment?
Yeah, Chair Gabriel. Yeah, I agree with Director Hill that this is an area where we could get someone, and probably not just someone fire department, but probably more efficiency oriented to look at what we do, how we do it, and make it a complete look at the type of apparatus we need, the type of responses, and how we can help our neighbors. This is one of the things that I've always thought, that whatever we do, it's going to have a ripple effect on our neighbors. And I understand Local 1230's desire to go to Confire, and that brings back memories when we all wanted to go to San Francisco. And things change, and I think that if we had somebody look at our district and surrounding districts, I think we could answer a lot of questions that a lot of our surrounding agencies are having now. So that's my thought. I'd support getting some information.
Okay. Any other director wish to speak?
Just a thought, just listening to this conversation. We have relationships with the two, for better or for worse, the two communities that we serve. And it seems to me it would be reasonable to be expecting that they would give us projections about expected growth and, I don't know, diversification of activities and, in their jurisdictions that might help to inform our thinking. I mean, it seems like it ought to be a relatively, although I can imagine why they might be reluctant to do it. But it should be a relatively easy thing. I'm sure that they have it for the city of Hercules to give us projections about residential growth and commercial activity growth and new activities like, you know, transportation, that kind of thing that they're projecting over the next 5 years, they might be reluctant to do it because they would probably see what it would play into, and it would play into us likely coming back and which is something I hope we will do, is going after them again for the diffs that we're entitled to. But it seems like it would be reasonable to ask them and the county, I guess, for Rodeo or the MAC or something, I don't really know, to ask them for their projections. That might be a good starting point.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. That is very important. And you touched on a really key part is the transportation, with Hercules working to become sort of a transportation hub. It's interesting. It would be wise of us to at least consider the service demand associated with a population that is coming, that are using Hercules now to get to work, and you know that they may only be here for a short time, but they're here and they're present, and things happen. Any other comments from the board? I see Mr. Short's hands raised, but if the board wanted to speak on anything before I turned it to.
Well, I just like to jump in and echo something you said. I mean, we ignore what will likely be 10,000, tens of thousands of people that might be coming in here if we ever do get a ferry coupled with rail service. We ignore that at our own peril, because that's a huge increase in our assignment.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments from board members? Okay, Mr. Short.
Thank you once again. And I thank you, Director Hill, for mentioning, going back after the diff fees. It was something I wanted to bring up when we were talking about finding additional revenue streams. Revisiting that would be, I think, one of our best avenues to, get what we truly needed from the get-go. So I'm glad that got brought up. And then as far as the study that Chair Gabriel brought up, I believe that Hercules had some preliminary numbers. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when they did and it could have been from the Wildan report is what I'm drawing from, but they roughly said, the population increase for all of the new residential development in the city of Hercules, they were saying 2.5 persons per household. And we all know, especially those of us in the field, that when we go to houses, especially in the Bay Area, and in Hercules, being a family-oriented community, you sometimes have multiple families and generations in the same household, due simply to the ridiculous cost of housing in the area. And a lot of people just can't afford it on their own, so they have, whether it's in-laws, parents, whatever. So in all reality, we end up going, you can anticipate, they can say 2.5 per household increase, but we are probably looking more like, 5 or 6 people increase. So I think that what we're looking at is, we're going to see a significant increase in call volume, significant increase in our population density, and then we're still going to be trying to answer all of that, on our own. It takes a toll on everything. And, even today, we still don't do it on our own on all major incidents. I was on duty earlier this week, and we were fortunate to have our normal Battalion 7 response and get Crew 12 hand crew from Con Fire with all the entry level, let's call them kids, that are being, allowed this opportunity to get into the fire service and work a hand crew, come out and, cut line in Rodeo. And that's the kind of stuff that we're constantly, drawing on, and it goes both ways for us. We respond into the county areas as well. So as everyone continues to grow, it's just, we have to be able to grow. And so we are going to see those increases. And I believe there may be some information already out there that we can draw from that's not, specifically, as Director Preza pointed out, from the firefighters, the fire department or this local standpoint, but actual data that they've done in their anticipation of the growth.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments, questions from the board or from the public in regards to this particular challenge, we'll call it? With that, I guess we do need to give chief and staff a direction for this. We mentioned obtaining a number of studies and growth projections for both city and county of city of Hercules and the town of Rodeo, obtaining the information for planned growth, anticipated population increases associated with each. Do you know, Chief Craig, if there's any talk about the impact of the transportation system and how many folks it'll have coming through?
No, I don't know if, I'm sure that there is, but I've not had that particular, on that exact point, conversation with the city. It's only pertaining to just what they feel the impacts will be from the new transportation hub. I think they anticipated before we had COVID that the transportation would be outgoing. It wouldn't be that much income.
Okay. And so was there any other information that we can use to address this challenge and find the service need? I mean, one thing I would like to see is look back at what development we had, at least in Hercules, and if there was in Rodeo, of a multi-unit building and how that impacted with the call volume. I'm trying to think of one that isn't necessarily a senior center. For example, when Aventine opened, I don't know what the call volume is for that particular complex, but it's kind of worth at least looking at of when it opened, when it started accepting tenants, how many calls was being dispatched over to the Aventine. I think that's something that we should know. And if there was any other multi-unit building, not necessarily a senior facility, but just a normal, not normal, but a just a normal multi-unit building. Any other suggestions from the board about that? Okay. I think that'll at least get us that first part. I think if we deem it necessary, we can certainly revisit and look and see, okay, do we need, is this something that we should hire and reach out to a professional to do a further evaluation? Or is it something that we can sort of piece together ourselves with the information that we have and look at call volume impact? Okay. Next item is the
Chair Gabriel.
Yeah.
Just one more in regards to service demand assessment. To me, I think that's a little more encompassing than just strictly call volume. We should look at our ability or inabilities to respond to all type of emergencies that could occur within the district today and into the future, as Director Hill pointed out, as the intermodal center is developed. So I think that, to me, is part of the service demand assessment, is to being able to address and be able to respond to any of those types of emergencies that we possibly aren't responding to right now.
Okay, so not just how much of a response we have, the types of responses that are going to be necessary. Just to make sure I've heard you right.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think that absolutely we should look at that of the types of emergencies that we have, and then maybe including whether or not we're equipped for those types of emergencies or not is worth taking a look at.
And it seems to me if we're going to have a ferry terminal in the future, we better be thinking about giving the chiefs some little rubber boats.
Yeah, I got one in the backyard. You might need
Not little rubber boats. Big.
Big rubber boat, BRB.
Okay, I mean, if the board doesn't mind, like I said, I'm not feeling too well. I'd like to take a quick break. We've done some really good discussion. Is it okay if we take like a 5 or 10-minute break?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. See everyone. Let's see. The time is 10:40. We should just come back 10:50. All right. I'll see everyone soon. Do we have everyone here now? Oh, there we go. Okay. I think we'll give it another minute here just to make sure everyone's back.
I'm back.
Thank you, Director Prather. I see Director Thorpe. We'll just wait in a couple more minutes here. Perfect. Looks like we got everyone back here. Okay. I guess we can just pick up from where we left off. I think we were going to move on to the next item, which is current assets and projection. That one, I'm not too sure if we want to discuss any challenges associated with the district's current assets, that can include both the trucks, the items that we have, the facilities, and just sort of how in terms of projection, I'm not sure if that means, what do we need to replace? But I know like a few challenges immediately present are just, facilities need some update with the classrooms, for just one example.
Chair Gabriel, yeah, and one of the other challenges, as far as I look at, as far as our current assets, is the Hercules station. We have taken on the lion's share of the maintenance of this building. Now currently, the huge expense of replacing all the concrete around the building that has deteriorated, the removal of the trees that is adding to that deterioration. I would personally like to approach the city of Hercules and try to have a conversation with them about dissolving the lease and us just taking over this piece of property. Because the only thing they're doing for it right now is paying the property taxes, and we are doing everything else.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing to consider is, we have this infinity year lease, or not infinity, but it's like a very, very long time lease for $1. Is there a benefit though to having this property not be a part of our assets? And maybe that can be pointed to Getachew, if you don't mind enlightening us, if it's a benefit to have it as an asset. Is he? And maybe Getachew, if you can, if you know off the top of your head. Oh. Okay. Well, that's a consideration.
I think he's off mute, but for some reason we're just not getting any audio.
Is there anything on our end, Kim?
I can't see anything on my end. He's unmuted. So maybe he hasn't returned. Maybe he stepped away and he's not back yet.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at least in terms of couching this as a challenge, I mean, one thing is just like the long-term assets, the properties that we have, and that their need for an update, and actually becoming our own assets.
You know, it strikes me that maybe for the purposes of, you know, the context of this discussion, rather than jumping to the solution, maybe what we ought to be contemplating in a 5-year plan is how do we most efficiently provide the facilities that we need to fulfill our mission to the communities we serve. You know, maybe, you know, there may be other, I mean, I can think of a couple of possible approaches other than the one that's on the table. Maybe we should contemplate how we best serve our communities from a facilities perspective.
And so with that challenge, like what information would you like to see to sort of address that challenge?
Well, I mean, this is a big cauldron of stew, right? So one thing is impacted by all the other considerations. But I guess we've already talked about, sorry, losing my train of thought here. We've already talked about call volume, complexity, that kind of thing. I would say that would drive the staffing levels we would need. It would probably also drive some understanding of where we need to provide those services and where we would best position facilities, that sort of thing. You know, we've often talked about a third station, but, you know, there's all kinds of, it strikes me that there's all kinds of possibilities, you know, like one consolidated station in the middle, things like that, which might be more efficient. It might be another way of getting at the efficiency the chief's driving at in terms of maintenance of the one station. So I think call volume, complexity, sort of geographic location of the call volume. I don't know what else. Somebody else help me. Damon, help me.
Yeah, there's lots of different, you know, things that go into that.
You know, response times gets to be kind of the #1 priority, and that's why, you know, the station in the valley, the Hercules station, is pretty pivotal to that as far as being able to respond into the calls in the valley. I mean, the one station idea, I don't think at one time it was probably viable, but I don't think it will be in regards to, as everybody's pointed out, as the population increases. If we were to remain standalone, you know, we would actually probably have to start looking at not only moving Station 75, but also possibly even having a third station somewhere down by the waterfront, whether it was a single bay station, you know, with just one company. But those are all, like you said, you know, we're talking about future needs and future goals, and that I think it's actually on your list here as E. But that's those kind of things that I think we need to think about.
Yeah, I didn't throw out the one station idea to me really to, you know, discuss that, but just to point out that there's probably some other things we could consider if the topic is the challenge of how we best most efficiently provide facilities to support our mission.
And to add on to that, I mean, I think an assessment of our current stations warrants a a review, because, like I said, these are big expenses coming down the line. I mean, that does roll back into financially, but it also affects us sort of public outreach. Those classrooms are invaluable for our public outreach. And just things like the parking lot, which is turning out to be a 6-figure expense. And so I think one thing worth looking at is sort of the current status of what we have now. And we already have a lot of the information in terms of the apparatus, because we have a fleet manager already taking care of a lot of that data. I think we just need to also look at our real property assets and the status of those. I mean, things like even the burn trailer is almost, 15 years old. And so, these are things that we have to think about and turn around and evaluate and reflect, are these assets good? And if they are good, or if they're not in sort of the best condition, what will it look like and what will it take to reach that? Because I think if we're going to think strategically, we can't wait until, the floor in the classroom falls down, or the burn trailer pops a tire while it's going through its cycle, or I've never seen it before, so I'm sorry. But it's one of those things we have to consider going forward, just evaluating and looking, because we know that things need to be changed. The question is, what needs to be changed and how does it need to be changed?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think for the purposes of this discussion, what we probably need is some sort of an executive summary from the chief about all of these resources and their useful lives and where we are and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Chair Gabriel?
Yes.
Something I'd like to suggest is, why don't we take the 5 directors, and each of us put together your own 5-year plan, what you think is important, address the call volume, address where our stations are located. But let's take all of our ideas, and it's like anything, you're going to have good ideas, you're going to have out of the box ideas, but the important thing is that we have all of these ideas that we can move around and say, yeah, this will work, that'll work. And I always like that saying where the guy said, yeah, it was a crazy idea, and the guy said, hey, if it worked, it wasn't a crazy idea. So I think that's what we need is information and ideas hitting the table. And I think that we can do some good work here in the next month or two if we continue our strategic planning.
Yeah, I hear you, but I think first and foremost, we need to come to some sort of idea and consensus about, what information do we need? Because I think Steve used this metaphor before, and it's really stuck with me since. It's putting the cart before the horse with the strategic planning thinking. And I think, yeah, we should stick with what we're doing now in terms of finding these challenges, gathering information, and then coming up with informed decisions on what to put for our strategic plan and executing them, making sure that they're realistic. I think that idea we can think about later on, Director Prather. I don't want to dismiss that idea because I think that's worth coming back to and discussing with the board. I think at this early stage, that might not be conducive, but I'm just one person. If anyone else in the board would rather do that approach after we're done here, that's also an option.
Well, I'm kind of with Bill, at least I'm part of that. And I even suggested something similar to something analogous to that, the last time we talked about this, I think. I think it would be good to get to the point where, in the interest of time on this, that, we've identified the challenges we want to address in our 5-year strategic plan. We've asked the chief to provide the information we need for us to understand the circumstances related to each. And then it might be useful for us to have a session where maybe we distill it down to the top, I don't know what it is, 5, it's up to us, but 5 challenges. And then maybe we do our homework ahead of time and identify individually what we think the solutions to those challenges might be. And then we come together perhaps to talk about them. But I think that would require us to do a couple of things. 1, identify the challenges. 2, then agree on what the distilled down list of those challenges we're willing to take on are. is, the list is, and then to do some homework on each. So I kind of am in agreement with both of you, actually. One, that I think we probably could bring our thinking individually to the table for a discussion if we distill it down to something that we can get our heads around for one discussion. And I also agree that I don't think we're there yet, because we need to identify all the challenges and agree as a board what they are that we're going to address.
Perfect. I'm in line with doing that. Should we just carry on with our discussion then, at least just get through this meeting? And then the remaining sections of this workshop strategic planning, we can talk about, you know, scheduling, and even if we want to be the ones to do this, or do we want to hand over this stack of challenges and information that we need and hand it over to a third party that's willing to do it? Was there any other board members that wanted to comment? I know we have a hand raised.
Yeah, I think another consideration we need to take into account is the effect of Measure O on these issues we're talking about. The limitations of Measure O.
Are you talking about like the service minimums of the measure?
Well, all sorts of things having to do with consolidation, anything to do with any major funding question seems to me is dependent on the limitations of Measure O. Measure O requires certain things of the department, the district. Am I correct?
We're really early on the stages of discussion on that, on just the idea of consolidation. I think that is a consideration if we decide to sort of explore that path. But yeah, I hear your point about Measure O and its obligations, and whether or not a consolidation affects our ability to collect those.
One issue.
Hmm?
That's just that one issue. I think there's other issues that are affected by it as well.
I hear you. But I think we'll get to that in item G. Just so we can get through this part here. So we're still on current assets and projection. Was there any other comments from the board on this particular item? I think, Chief, did you get enough direction from us?
You know, I absolutely appreciate the board's confidence in staff and it be able to formulate each one of these topics and items that you've brought to staff's attention and ask for this deep dive on each one of these topics. But it's becoming more and more apparent to me that I truly, and I commend you in thinking so highly of me, but believe it or not, just on a day-to-day basis, there is just not the time in the day to be able to formulate the type of reports that you're asking for. Or the in-depth of a type of report that I think is warranted and that you deserve. And so that will probably bring us, at some point, we can talk about that when we get to item C. But, to do this justice and to give you, I think, the information that you're truly looking for, we would have to look at hiring an outside consultant that, at some point in that, he would interview each and every one of you to get your input. But to be able to hit the notes that I currently have, I'm not even sure when I'd be able, I'm not sure what year it would be by the time I was able to formulate all this information and like I said, the deep dive that you expect on each one of these topics and the reports that I think that you are looking to have generated. Just a kind of food for thought.
It's good to know. I think what we can do is at the end of this sort of this A through, well, now it's A through H. This A through H exercise, I think we should look at, okay, we've gone through these items. We've talked about what information we need. And then we can discuss, our ability to even meet those, the information that we want in section B, and whether it's within staff's capability. Because I understand, Chief Greg, it's you, it's Kim, it's Tammy, and that's it for administrative staff, so to speak. So I think, yeah, we should look at the ability to do these things. But I guess for now, we're just working on, what information will we want, and then we'll look at sort of the ability to work on that afterwards, if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, well, I hear you, Chief Craig. I know that you wear a lot of assistant chief hats. In addition to being the fire chief, where these things might fall in a larger organization. And so that's why I've taken pains to say executive summary every time I've talked about it. But maybe what we ought to do is, I don't know if we have time today to do this or not, and I don't know if everybody agrees with it, but maybe we ought to go back quickly over the big buckets we talked about and identify what kind of, just review and make a list of the reports we'd like, because I think some of it's probably existing information. And so maybe we could at least go after the low hanging fruit, the stuff that already exists. I mean, there's a fleet plan, I'm sure. And I don't know, so maybe just identify where we could get some executive summaries, 1 page, 2 page documents that would help guide us a little bit. Because I think what we're going to end up doing is, it seems logical to me, we're going to go after each of these individual buckets and have some detailed discussions about them. So whatever information that already exists would be nice to have, and then we can figure out whether we need to hire a consultant to do the rest.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments from the board? I see that we have a hand up, Mr. Short.
Yes, thank you. And just to be quick, in my day job, as Director Hill likes to say, I also assist with the facilities maintenance and direction and upkeep, and am currently working been doing site surveys ongoing of both of our facilities. And basically what I could provide is just what the anticipated bids for each of the potential projects, and things outside of the current concrete work that the chief is overseeing. Because I will tell you that right off the bat, the interior of both stations are in need of some significant upgrades and repairs, if not being like rebuilt and remodeled. So that is stuff that's in the works. I don't know if that would suffice with enough information for you, but it would at least give us a ballpark of what we're looking at expenditure wise without having to spend any money. I've heard a lot of consultants and experts offered up out there, and as we're talking about strategic plan and finances, it's concerning with my other hat of there's a lot of potential money for outside sources to be contracted to provide this information. So at best I could provide anticipated costs via bids of just what some of these expenditures we're looking at would need. And those include, kitchen and bathrooms right off the top of our head are in bad shape currently. So if that's something that the board would like, I am working with the chief on that, and he is aware that, I've taken that on, and, just kind of doing a site survey of everything. And, he's authorized me to just pursue, like I said, getting bids on that stuff to see what it's going to entail and potentially cost us.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Short.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll defer to the chief if he wants to take you up on that offer.
Yep. Like he said, he's in the middle of putting that information together, and that would just be part of one of my executive summaries back to the board in regards to our facilities.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Any other items to discuss in regards to the current assets and projections? Okay, so let's go to the next item here. I just closed my agenda, so I don't know why I closed it. There it is. Potential need for third fire station. I think this is a pretty big and heavy topic. I guess we'll just open up the discussion. I think that, yeah. Did anyone want to discuss about the third station, the need for a third station?
We have a need for a third station.
Thank you. Straight and to the point. I appreciate it. Yes, I agree. We do need a third station as well. There's our challenge.
I do have one question about that. So just in regards to consolidation, what we talked about earlier, and how it kind of solves some of the issues on our list. Chief, how would consolidation solve the issue of, you know, where our fire stations are located, coverage, things of that nature? What's the closest Contra Costa County station? I think it's up on maybe Appian or in that area. So how would that help Hercules and Rodeo coverage wise?
Well, you know, and we consider, even though it's a Panola station, you know, it's all part of Battalion 7. So we don't really look at it as, you know, who owns the stations right now. We look at how our responses are based on Battalion 7. And those, you know, the auto aid agreement with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, truly what would have to be looked at, if a consolidation was to occur, would, you know, some GIS mapping to see if the current configuration of stations are, you know, in their best locations. And then, you know, what else needs to be done? You know, do we need an additional station? Where should it be located?
But at that point, it's kind of out of our hands at that point, right? Because you're under the county umbrella, and they would have to say, yeah, we need another station. No, we don't. Or
correct.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't get immediate relief from, in that aspect. We don't get immediate relief from being part of Compire.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Two thoughts. One, going back to consolidation. One of the things we need to check is, does the tax money that we generate via the benefit and parcel taxes, would they automatically go with Confire? That's something I've heard both sides of the coin on that one. The other thing is on stations. I was opposed to redoing the station in Rodeo at the time. And that station should have, in my opinion, should have been out on Willow Avenue, you know, near the freeway or just past the freeway. We need to think about the stations, and this is why I think cooperation with all agencies, Richmond, Confire, and look at things like a blank slate and take into consideration what our runs are doing now. These are all part of the old 5-year look ahead. I mean, there's not one thing that stands alone. They're all things that have an effect on our strategic planning. But I've always opposed that every station that we have over here now, except for Station 70, that's going to be in a new location. But all the other stations were where the small town was, and they had their first fire station. It didn't make it the right location after all the development happened, but politicians weren't thinking that way. Thank you.
Here. Bill, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I think what we're doing here is we have I think it's human nature. I mean, I think we all do it, but we've framed our discussion around a solution to a problem that, to your point, I'm not sure we understand exactly what the challenge is, because there's so many moving pieces on it, you know, and I kind of hate for us to have the starting point being the solution. If that makes sense. You know, I don't know. I threw out one that's probably unworkable a moment ago just as an example, but you know, maybe we don't need a second station. Maybe we need a second station in a different place. Maybe we don't need a complete second station, but maybe we need the satellite station that the chief referred to earlier that maybe becomes the squad that responds to a lot of these EMS calls. I mean, I just think we don't, I mean, I'm going to speak for myself, not anybody else. I don't understand the challenge quite enough to know what the solution is that I'd sort of get on board with. I do agree on one thing, that I don't think we're best configured facilities wise to meet the challenges, but that's only just my gut instinct. I don't really have anything to base that on.
If I can interject one last thing, the end of the tunnel is always money, and we should never forget that anything we do in a strategic plan should lead us to having a successful vote on whatever we need from the public, and that gives us the 5-year window to do the proper outreach and make sure that we don't offend the voter on the way where we lose a vote and have to get 2 to make up for the one that we lost. I mean, it's I came on the board because we lost a vote. No fire agency should lose a vote, in my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. I mean, I guess we got to look at it from a deeper perspective then of, you know, the problem isn't necessarily, the challenge that we have isn't necessarily the need for a third station, but I mean, the service, I guess it falls back on that, and being able to meet not only our current service demands, but our future ones should be rolled into the discussion about that. And with that, any other comments or discussion regarding the need for a third station? I'm just rereading the item itself.
I have Jerry Short if you're ready.
Yes.
Can I say, hey, Andrew, can I say one more thing? I'd just like to tag on to what Bill said. You
Go
know,
ahead.
I think that we're embarked on this discussion now that is the preliminary discussion that will hopefully become the 5-year strategic plan, which provides direction to the board. But it's, you know, what he said a minute ago is really important, Bill did. This is a plan that we would have to present to the public, and I think give them some opportunity to comment on, and in so doing, hopefully, because it's well thought out and it supports the needs of the residents, that sort of thing, would be accepted by them, and would be, you know, would be an example, would be something that they could get behind to support us if we do need to have a vote at some point on something, rather than, you know, rather than not support us. But there's an important public information component to this too, I'd say, this process we're embarked on.
Okay. Thank you. I think we had a speaker, Mr. Short.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to kind of circle back on a couple of the inquiries that Director Covington had made in regards to, you know, the benefit, or, you know, what we received additionally coverage. With the current Battalion 7 agreement, and even the previous one, you know, we do receive what is called move up and cover. And that is through the Battalion 7 agreement with Contra Costa Fire. So what in that happens is, in a greater alarm assignment where the Battalion 7 units are being utilized, you know, for a lengthy call, i.e., you know, one of a couple of grass fires we've had in the last couple of weeks, a Confire unit does in fact become automatically moved up through the CAD system to come and cover one or two of the stations, depending on the length of the incident. In addition to already providing support via resources, engine companies at the scene of the incident as well. So where that's an agreement and on paper, if, you know, consolidation was a viable option and a road that we traveled down to look at, that would no longer have to be an agreement, and it would just be part of normal day-to-day operations. So where we're hampered now by, you know, we have to go training delayed because we're out doing something with no move up necessarily for that being penciled into the agreement, because it's just, you know, how do you do that versus for a call need, we can make those arrangements, and it's a seamless transition every day. So all the chess pieces, if you will, of the engines and everything from all of the different locations within Confire, you move around fluidly and seamlessly to allow for all of those stations and different companies to go and train seamlessly without any interruption of service or delay. So, you know, just again, I'll use our most recent incident that I was on. We came back to Station 76 and we had one of the Martinez engine companies covering. And, you know, that is part of our agreement. But like, again, I'd say with the consolidated effort, we wouldn't necessarily be under a contractual language, because it would just be a seamless thing on a day-to-day, just an everyday part of normal business, if you will. So it's a benefit that we currently have, but it's limited, and we could enhance that, you know, potentially in the future. So that is something that we currently do, and that helps to alleviate some of the increase in call volume. But you know, if you look to our neighbors in the city of Pinole being a one-horse station, if you will, with the single engine company, you know, we risk the potential of being similar to them with two stations, where we're going to be inundated with call volume and both engines are tied up, and then you're getting help from our neighbors anyway. So that it's already happening, but we could even improve it and make it even better for our public and our personnel as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Short.
Uh-huh.
Okay, did the board want to add any additional comments?
Well, I'd like to see us make this one of our sub-planning discussions, armed with some more information, which I think comes from some of the other discussions, where we could get the ideas out there on the table and try and find some consensus on where we want, what direction we want to adopt and where we want to go on this. Because I think they're all pretty complex, but this is a especially complex one that requires some really detailed, I don't know, homework and discussion amongst the board.
Okay, I mean, we can add, we can put that under the H category that we added, the sort of all other things, to have us have an opportunity to discuss it today, or if you wanted to come back to it at a later date. Is there a preference for either one?
Well, are we talking about the station configuration?
I thought you were wanting to talk a little bit about the complexities of you know, integration with Confire.
Well, I guess I don't know what everybody else thinks, but to me, that's, if we look at the challenges we face, to me, that's one of the potential solutions to some of them.
Okay.
So I guess if we were to to my way of thinking, if we were to look at the challenges we face in formulating a 5-year plan and were to identify consolidation as a potential solution to sufficient number of those that we would want to consider it, then I think we should have a discussion about consolidation freestanding by itself to determine, you know, what the direction of the board is relative to pursuing that. But I don't know, I can just off the top of my head say I can see a lot of advantages to consolidation for a lot of different groups, our firefighters, our residents, this group, strategic planning, a lot of things. I don't know if I'm willing to say that's the end game at this point from my perspective. I mean, I think I'm kind of behind this 5-year strategic planning process where we identify the challenges and then evaluate the solutions and come to some consensus. I mean, it could very well turn out that becomes then I don't know what it is, the 5th bucket that we need to then have some kind of discussion and strategic planning and direction provided around. But I don't know if that's where we are or not. I'd be curious to know what other people think.
I don't think we're there quite yet, because like the chief said, he never even broached this discussion with Confire. For all we know, this option might not even be on the table for us. So I think just to make sure that we, you know, that's a viable option for us, we should reserve, you know, fully discussing that, at least at this point, and just focus on what our challenges are. And then, you know, when we get back to the point where we're looking back at these challenges and coming up with solutions and ideas, this can be one of the solutions that we can see what challenges a move like this would make when we know that there is an opportunity for this kind of action.
Well, just to clarify, and maybe I got this wrong, but I had the impression that when this came up in the very beginning of the conversation this morning, that we sort of opened the door to the chief discussing it, but I think it's almost a moot point anyway, because I can tell you that it's something that's been discussed for years probably. And I'm no doubt it's being discussed right now, given Captain Short's, comments. I would say it's something obviously that's being discussed by the rank and file. I imagine that the chief probably discusses it with his brother. I don't think there's any sister, brother chiefs. So, I mean, I think it's probably out there being discussed already, but I kind of had the impression from the early conversation that the door was sort of open to him having preliminary conversations about that, but maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah, no, that requires a formal board action, and unfortunately, given the nature of this meeting here, it's we aren't authorized to make any actions today. So no, we haven't opened up that door quite yet. So I think it's something that we should definitely consider adding to our next agenda. And having ability to sort of give him authority to do that. But we did, in the beginning, yeah, we did. I asked Mr. Pierotta if there was something that we can do with just general direction or a motion, and he recommended a motion, and we, at least I took his recommendation, and then we'll do a formal motion on that.
Well, I would say then, back to Andrew, your original question, I would say at some point pretty soon we ought to get around to deciding what our guidance to the chief is, because I would say we're deluding ourselves if we think it's not being discussed out there, with or without our guidance.
I hear you, but at the end of the day, it's our decision to make.
Correct. I agree with that.
Okay. With that, I mean, there's the potential need for a third fire station. I guess the next item is Battalion 7 functionality. That agreement just recently got formalized, right, Chief Craig?
You are correct, yes.
Pen to paper. Do you, in your experience with the day-to-day, Chief Craig, do you see any challenges associated with the Battalion 7 agreement, whether it's integrity or its execution?
No, it's already been referred to. It is absolutely currently in its new form. It is seamless. We function in a basically as a common fire battalion. So there is no differentiating between ourselves and any county units. And we just, like I said, seamlessly move up and down this corridor and over into central county. Just with a simple dispatch. So from my perspective, Battalion 7 is working in its current configuration pretty perfectly. Like I said, the move up and cover is seamless. The moving of units up and down this end of the corridor, because we're pretty landlocked over here in a east-west direction, it is pretty seamless.
Okay, I mean, I have no problem just going on to the next item, if the board's okay with that.
Well, I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the board already consider and approve the new Battalion 7 agreement?
That is affirmative and signed it. I personally, I think you probably could take that one off the list.
Hey, just for what it's worth, on this topic, there's a great little story in our own West County publication, West County Contra Costa Marketplace, about Battalion 7. Just came out just 2 days ago. I would share my screen, but the host has turned that off. But anyway, it's in that magazine that you guys all probably have on your kitchen tables.
Oh, thanks, Director Hill. I'll take a look at that. That's incredible. Okay, I think anyone want to speak, any attendees wishing to speak on this matter? Looks like I got a raised hand by Mr. Short.
Thank you. I just will echo what the chief has already said about the Battalion 7, the way it operates and everything. As I mentioned earlier, I started out here in early 2001, and we didn't have such agreement, and we saw, some detrimental and lasting impacts. That we recently just celebrated, the anniversary of passing of 2 of our own within, the battalion before its inception. And we've made great strides to correct any of those behaviors that were identified in the outcome of that tragedy. And we do work seamlessly with our fellow partners, Pinole, Comfire, El Cerrito. Even though they're not formally named in there, they consider themselves to be part of Battalion 7 or are utilized on a regular basis to help fill out the alarm assignments as needed. And the seamless transition, we run calls now, and we always have, but it's more informative. Our dispatch, everything is very cohesive, and it creates a great environment, and it actually kind of fosters the relationship and the mentality amongst the line personnel from all agencies. And I say all being, the Rodeo-Hercules, Pinole, and our Comfire stations that we run with the most. It further starts to facilitate and, foster that mentality of we should all be working together. When you talk to the line personnel in the companies at 70 and 69, and they get wind of, hey, is it true? Is it true? And, I've been a part of this proposal and this idea, several different times in my career. And all the time, it's always well received by the line personnel that it only makes sense to look at that option. And we're already doing it. Why not just be one? You guys, we can make it so much better and even already improve what we look at as a seamless thing and enhance, our service to the public and to ourselves. So it's a great thing. And, the new revised agreement covered some of the areas that the previous one needed to improve upon. And we hope to make even further improvements where it's no longer just an agreement, but like I said, it's, a seamless just way of working every single day if we were to pursue looking at, being under one umbrella, if you will. So it is a good thing. And, we support it from the line, from the local side, everything. It's a great benefit to the community, and without it, we really wouldn't be able to serve the public at the level that we are right now, because we cannot stand alone. So it's an imperative thing, and we're really glad it's in existence, and would like to see it improved upon.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I think Battalion 7 functionality does no further information, no discussion really about that other than, how pivotal that the formalized agreement is, and how well its execution has been for everyone. Next is, we've touched on this throughout this workshop, but here's the actual item. Review and assessment regarding viability of consolidation. I think one thing too that we should look at in terms of challenges is something that Director Thorpe had mentioned earlier, and that's its impact on our revenue sources if we were to do consolidation. But that's I wanted to gauge the board's interest on whether this is something we want to talk about now, or if we would rather wait until sort of after a little bit later in this process. Maybe wanted to poll, get some feedback from the board.
My thoughts on that are, I think we just need to all get on the same page about what our goals are. Like if Chief Craig and if Captain Short and the rest of the department is really got an eye on consolidation, well then why don't we put our focus on consolidation instead of focusing on all these other things that, we could be kind of spinning our wheels on. Like if we're really maybe the board should have a conversation about consolidation, and if that's what, you know, we think is best for the department, because they've expressed their viewpoint on that's what they want to do. So if that's what they want to do, and we feel like that's the most viable option, then why don't we put our energy and focus into doing that versus these other 8 things that may or may not even be relevant. That's my thoughts on that.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director Prather?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the consolidation. I've never been under the impression that big makes best. Innovation is the key. We need more information before we just get on one track to look at consolidation. And as I said, I would be more than happy to send some ideas out. I'd like to hear ideas from everybody, including the working people that do the job. I have my thoughts and ideas, and a lot of them go back to my days in Richmond. And I got early retired, and I didn't get to do a lot of the things that we would have liked to have done. It's never too late to avoid making that mistake. And I think if we only focus on consolidation, we're going to have the public to deal with in this. And as I said, the money situation, we don't know. I've heard it both sides, that the money's going to follow whatever. Nobody knows, and litigation can be a big factor in this. And to isolate and say, okay, we're only going to focus on this, that's like having blinders on. We need information. We need to know things that maybe other people have done that made things better for everybody. We hear about this. The thing that I hear is our response time. Well, the response time is a very crucial thing. But my concern is what happens when the crew gets there. We have lots of things that we need to get answers to, and this is a start. It'd be nice to, not have to do it on a Zoom. I'd like to see the COVID thing get by us, but until then, let's just continue what we're doing and not focus just on one thinking of the solution. That's my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Director Prather.
I have a couple of thoughts about this. I think that, and I appreciate Captain Jerry's comments because they kind of focus my thinking a little bit. I think that, we have to, I think when we talk about our strategic planning process, we have to recognize, and I'd like to say accept the fact that we're already an operationally consolidated fire district. We don't do anything really operationally by ourselves. We can't even respond to the simplest of structure fires by ourselves. We require our Battalion 7 partners, not just Confire, it's Panola as well. We can't do we respond to, I don't know, Chief, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we respond to EMS calls, I guess, by ourselves. But anything else, we are an operationally consolidated fire district. So it's really all those other considerations. And I guess what I would say by way of answering Chair's question is, I would say, I think we've identified, I don't know, I think it's like 4 buckets of items of separate discussion that are the challenges that we need to address individually to come up with some direction for our strategic planning for each of those. And maybe if we were to look at those and have discussions around those, that might help form our, our thinking about how we want to proceed on the notion of consolidation. But I mean, but I just think it's important for us to recognize, unless someone has a contrarian view that I'd be eager to hear, we are already an operationally consolidated fire district.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so I mean, going back to this item here, I would like to get more information. I mean, I personally am not sold on the idea quite yet, but that's simply because I can't make an informed decision, especially with a really big decision like consolidation. It's not necessarily something that I'm ready to make an opinion on. So like I run on the assumption of no until proven yes. So I would like to see more information on that. But in terms of this process here, I mean, this project began as to forecast the district, to look forward 5 years. I think way earlier in the process, we were looking, 5, 10 years. And now we're kind of getting our first crack at it. I would like to carry on with this process that we're going through and building our strategic plan. But we can chew gum and walk at the same time. So we can look at the viability and what a consolidation will look like, while also planning for our district's future, with options other than consolidation. So in regards to this item, I think that it's something we should definitely come back to at a later time with more information in hand, because I've never gone through the consolidation. I haven't had a chance to review even documentation from other districts that have gone through this process, and its impact, whether positive or negative. I know functionally we may be consolidated, but I want to see what other value we added by being categorized as a special district. But like I said, going back to this strategic planning process, it's definitely a solution. And if we fall back to our buckets or our categories of potential challenges, I think we'll find that that this may or may not check off a lot of those and alleviate a lot of those. Any other comments in regards to this item? Looks like you forgot to put us on mute. Okay. I think we added an H to act as a catch-all. Oh, well, I think sorry, I missed Mr. Short's hand. You raised it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that I like what the direction is kind of leading towards. I understand that we have to make a motion specifically on this topic at possibly in our next regularly scheduled board meeting. But I think that it would owe yourselves all possibly a significant lightening of the potential workload, and that being placed upon our poor administrative staff. In looking at at least pursuing to get this one, as Director Hill referred to it, I think it is kind of the 500 to 800 pound gorilla in the room. It's something that's been thrown out in many configurations in previous years, and there is a lot of truth, and I think some not I want to say misunderstanding, but some information still lacking in the fact that the analogy of us being operationally consolidated currently. So I think that it would be great if the board was willing to proceed to give the chief that explicit direction in the right format, to at least, let's say, vet it, get those questions answered. I will say that, knowing that Confire as a whole is a special district, as are we. So there is some similarities in the transferability of things. And there is some legal parameters that certain things have to fall in. But I think if we at least maybe put that in the forefront of looking at it as a viable option, if you will, to then know, okay, hey, if it is, let's say, and it's something that the board wished to continue to go down that road, it would alleviate the workload that we're putting on the chief and Kim and potentially myself as the facilities guy and all this stuff. And then we could at least vet that one last time to see if there's the interest, or okay, and now we know whether or not we're going to have to truly stand on our own. And then, if it was a viable option, and then, yes, of course, we start that public outreach, that education, and that process, and that would be our primary focus. So that's, my thoughts looking at it. I agree with what Director Hill mentioned, that, to think that those conversations aren't happening with or without direction at some level, whether it's from the crew level to mid-management or, a casual conversation throwing it out there, spitballing ideas. I think that we probably owe it to, number one, our membership within the Rodeo-Hercules Fire District, and number two, and it's a tie, I'd say, for 1 and 2 between our membership and the citizens, and truly doing what is best for all of them, and in turn allowing the current Rodeo-Hercules firefighters the abilities to give the public truly the best top-notch service that they can give them, and all the tools to do that successfully. So long story short, I would love to see that direction given, and maybe we vet that first before we head down the other, because we do have a lot of buckets, and I think that we could fill up this one quicker and at least have that one taken out, as we're able to remove the Battalion 7 functionality from the agenda, because it is something that works well. If we were able to determine that this is a viable option, it could alleviate a lot of potential workload for all parties involved.
Before we leave this topic, I'm wondering, is this something that we could entertain on our next board meeting agenda, and maybe have a presentation from the chief and from 12:30 on pros and cons of the concept, so that we can start to get our heads around some kind of guidance to offer up to the chief?
Yeah, I mean, Chief Craig, if you don't mind putting this on the next agenda, just have it as an action item for us. And then the very next meeting, once you have that authority once you have that authority from the board to act on our behalf and reach out regarding consolidation, coming back the next meeting with more information, better understanding of what Confire has to offer at that time. Is that something you're able to do for us? Yeah, okay, I see, said Jake. So, yeah, does that work for everyone? That sort of timeline? I hear no opposition, so, okay. Thank you, Mr. Short. And so, I guess item H that we added is just sort of the catch-all. Were there any other challenges or discussion topics that anyone wanted to bring up that wasn't necessarily included in items A through G? Okay. Next, so then we can move on. So was there anything else anyone want to talk about in this section, the different topics that we've gone over? A lot of information has gone back and forth. We've touched on consolidation multiple times on there. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to bring up at this time?
I'll only mention one thing. As we've been working through this, I've been working in a collaborative brainstorming tool just to create sort of a visual of these buckets and the challenges and opportunities for each, that I think might be useful for us to consider using as a collaboration tool for all of us to provide our thoughts on opportunities, that kind of thing. And I don't know if you want me to share that view quickly so that you can just see what that kind of thing looks like or not.
Yeah, I mean, if Kim can allow for the share screen function for you. I know you said you were locked out of that.
Yeah, it's turned off right now.
And let me see if I can figure this out. I don't see anywhere that gives me the option. Oh, okay, 1 second.
So here's what can you guys see that? Everybody see that?
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so here's and there's no magic about this. This is just me scribbling notes as we've been talking through it. But as I've been scribbling these notes, which we might want to adjust, but this might help to inform our thinking. It seems to me there have been 4 sort of big buckets: revenue stream reductions, call volume, complexity, facilities, equipment, and other resources, and recruitment and retention that we talked about. And then I just started putting in some notes on what the challenges are for each and the opportunities. And some of the opportunities are pretty much my thinking, which I don't intend to suggest that we should only be looking at my thinking. But we might consider, and I did put consolidation down here as sort of a freestanding thing with no notes whatsoever. But I'm thinking this might be something we might consider using for collaborating and getting to Bill's point earlier about getting in here our suggested opportunities we may consider that could guide our thinking on the ultimate 5-year plan. Just for what it's worth, it's a tool that we might want to use.
Sure. Were you thinking of like us being able to contribute to one primary document or sort of make our own?
No, I mean, this is a collaborative tool, so I could send out an email allowing each of us to have anybody at RHF with an rhfd.org email address actually has access to this. They don't know it because I haven't invited them, but I can invite those of us on this call, and we could each put in our, maybe with some suggestion, some direction on how to use it. We could each put in our opportunities, maybe with our initials or something. And then I was thinking maybe for future discussions, we could, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but we could carve out revenue stream reductions and have a discussion just around that, but already be informed by everyone's ideas on the opportunity, the challenges and the opportunities.
Okay. Let me just run it by Mr. Pierota briefly, if this is something we can do without running into the Brown Act issues.
Yes, I think that's fine. But a substantive discussion about it would have to occur at a board meeting. So it's essentially, and if it's open to everybody in the district, as long as there's no discussion that's evident about it, it should be okay.
I was thinking it might just be a way to collect thinking so that we could have a discussion about each of these buckets, informed by what our thoughts are. Each of our thoughts are, and we could then begin to distill it down to something that, you know.
Yeah, the distillation will have to happen at a board meeting.
Right, of course. It would require discussion anyway.
Okay, perfect. And with that, I mean, I just asked the board keep it cognizant about that there's no discussion, substantive or no discussion regarding the matters, that you just simply add your own items and ideas in there. But I mean, with that, since we got the approval, yes, Director Hill, if you don't mind sending that over to us, the invitation link. That's actually.
Well, I won't send it to everybody because that's probably a violation, but I'll send it to you, Rich, the chief, and Kimberly, and then somehow somebody would need to get it out to the board.
You can send it as a BCC, Director Hill.
Okay, we'll do. We'll do.
Perfect. Thank you. Should have taken a screenshot of that before we move to our next item. The direction to staff on strategic plan items. I think this is the one we talked a little bit earlier about. Thank you. I'm just going to screenshot that because this would be handy for our discussion here. So with that, we mentioned that we requested a lot of information for us here. And so I wanted to run it by everyone and just see, okay, well, what information do we truly need in order to do what we need to do? In order to answer these challenges or to have more information about the challenges that we face here. Just pulling this up here.
We want to take it. Do we want to take it bucket by bucket, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, let's do it item by item here. I think that works for me. So the recruitment retention, I think we wanted a sort of executive summary of the reasons why people are leaving.
I'm just adding we can massage this, but I'm just adding a sort of executive summary description here for the chief. Mm-hmm. Why personnel losses?
Yeah. And then I'd like to actually just see the number of personnel that have left as well in the last few years. I want to caveat this with excluding SAFER grant folks. We did have a time when we had a number of Safer Grant employees. So if we could maybe exclude them from this count.
If I can interject, we don't really have a recruitment issue, it's retention issues. I have a long list of people that want to come to work here. It's just keeping them after they come to work here.
Well, an issue, I would say that an issue could be a positive one, right?
Okay. Yeah, and then, I mean, that's about as much we need for the personnel. I mean, unless I don't know if Mr. Short is still on, if there's any way that he can maybe poll or see from his membership sort of anything that's going on that he can share with us to aid in our discussion.
Yes, I can provide if you give me the direction or might be more specific on what it is that you want, but yeah, I can provide that. And I would just like to say, as far as excluding Safer Grant, those people that were hired on the Safer Grant that stayed after the duration of the grant that became, you know, budgeted line item personnel, if you will, we did lose some of those. So to disclude them, I don't think would give a fair representation of the numbers, because they left after being absorbed as part of, you know, budgeted, approved line item personnel.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe
They didn't leave. We only lost a couple during the grant, just because they were all in different testing processes per se. But we have a core group of that grant, you know, all 9 of them at one time that were absorbed into the budget as, you know, line personnel, budgeted approved positions, not grant funded.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I
Yes.
guess we'll delete
So
that.
I can include that, you know, in my information, and then get the other information from the membership.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, what we would want to see is sort of, and if the board wants to contribute to this, is, you know, what do they like about their employment with RHFD? What do they see as being, you know, if they were to leave, what would drive them to that point?
Okay, yeah, that's not far out of conversations that occur, you know, around the coffee table or throughout the course of a day. So it wouldn't be a hard ask to get that information. So I can start working on that.
You know, from the board perspective, I think this kind of all tends to get to cost. It's dollars, and so I'm thinking that maybe we could expand this a little bit. And I'm not looking for a lot of information, but it would be interesting for me when in that recruitment issues portion, you know, it'd be interesting for me to have a better sense of from the chief of what the costs are, because you know, there's onboarding costs, there's, you know, training, there's time. I'd be interested to know, in terms of recruitment issues, it's great to know that we have a long list of potential recruits, but what's the cost of losing someone?
Also, a little point of order: can direction come to the chief, to my personnel, not from the board to the personnel, please?
Oh, my apologies, Chief Craig.
I believe Director Gabriel was on it to clarify. I think he was addressing it as my union position, Chief, and not as a district employee. But I do understand your wish.
Okay, yeah, my apologies on that. Yeah, just to clarify on that. So with the employee retention and recruiting, is there anything else, other information that you think we need in order to address this challenge? I think that this pretty much covers the basis then for what information we need to come up with a solution. Okay. Next item would be the facilities, equipment, and other resources. I mean, we have the fleet management report already. That's a resource that we can just copy and paste onto a folder for us. What about the and this is directed to Chief Craig. I think you were going to work with your individual who's responsible for the assets or the facilities to come up with something for us to see, to review.
Well, we still have the fleet management report that was just done just a couple of years ago. And then also within your budget, hold on one second. Sorry about that. And then within your board, at the next board meeting, you'll get the final summary from the budget. And within that will also be a fleet management report.
Okay, and what about the facilities, like the real property stuff, the updates that need to happen to the stations? And
I can prepare that as part of, what we've been talking about for the strategic planning.
Perfect.
You won't receive that at the next, in fact, I don't know when you want to see all of this.
We'll work on the list of the things we want to see first, and then
Okay.
we'll come up with a timeline. And the feasibility of it too. I think, you voiced that, and we want to address that.
But yeah, the fleet management, as far as fleet management, that has already been completed.
Okay. Possible.
I thought about this, just thinking off the top of my head, but I think as we identify what we'd like to know, maybe we should then come back one more round. I know we're out of time actually, but we should then decide what order we want to do it, because it strikes me as we're thinking through this, there's probably a somewhat logical order to give the chief some hope that we're not going to just want all this at once. What order we want to consider these things.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something we can talk about, because I think that is going to be, we can put that under item D, where we just want to time things out. Is that what you meant?
Yep.
Perfect. And then possible revenue stream reductions. I think that's definitely something that MRG has been working or mentioned that they would be willing to work with Chief Craig on, just at least the budgetary impact, and especially with COVID and any other effects on the economy and how it plays on the district. I like this app. I might use it for some other stuff as well.
Like that?
Yeah, exactly. And then the opportunities for additional grants and that sort of thing, the spending mix, mandatory versus discretionary. I think that just requires us to look at past budgets. So I think that is something that we already have the past budgets. We can just look at them.
Chief, didn't you say that we have some sort of contractor that helps us with the grants?
Yes.
Could they give us some kind of summary of the universe and what we're doing and what we're missing?
They don't give you grant opportunities. You bring the opportunities to them.
But could we, since that's their business, could we ask them, is it possible that we could ask them what opportunities we're missing?
Yes, I mean, we can ask any question we want.
I mean, I don't know, is that reasonable or unreasonable?
I think it's reasonable. Normally what I'll do is, if it's not something I'm going to write, which most of them I do myself, but I'll give them items that we're looking for or items we're looking to fill, whether it's equipment, whether, you know, whatever it may be. And then they look for opportunities to plug those into. It's kind of how it works.
So they're just, forgive me for, I just want to get my head around this. So their business is in helping us to create the grants.
Their business is me coming up with what I need, and then they can help facilitate, if necessary, to write the grant. And then once the grant is written, their hands are off of it.
So it would be in their best interest from a business perspective for us to identify collectively more grant opportunities, right?
That is correct.
So maybe we should just ask them to assess our, you know, our grant activity over the last, I don't know, 5 years, and based on their experience, tell us where we might be pursuing other opportunities. And
understand, you know, I send them topics quite often, and a lot of times they just say it's not viable. You know, that there's no grant opportunity for it, or we won't be successful in trying to obtain that funding. Understand that, you know, we're competing against hundreds of other different departments. Right. So you know, I always feel very fortunate anytime we are in receipt of a grant. Sure. So I think number one, we need to identify what grants we are looking for. What are we trying to fund? Before we just try to tax this other entity with providing us with grant opportunities. We need to know what is it that we want a grant for. It's almost exactly what you were talking about before. You know, it's kind of a problem looking for a solution, or a solution looking for a problem. So I think that's primary, is to identify truly what grants are we looking for? What are we looking to try to fund?
So given that our time is up, I mean, today really, what's the, I guess I'd ask the chair, how do we move forward on this? I mean, it's almost like it requires another discussion or something.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing though behind this is that I think we've been pretty proactive on getting grants lately. It was just one of those things that that was mentioned to us as, you know, helping offset some of the 2 to 3% reduction in our revenues with grants. And so I think that's, in terms of information we need for that, I guess, I don't even think we would need to necessarily look and see what grants we've received, because we've been successful in getting a number of them, both in just our department and working with other departments. So I think for now, I just threw that out there, but I think we're okay for now without having to need more additional information. And that won't really add to our discussion.
Well, I guess, you know, I have to say that I'd kind of like to know what grants the chief would like to have. I mean, for example, excuse me, I'd love to get a grant to get Bill's squad to respond to EMS calls. That would be a staffing and facilities and equipment grant, you know, something like that. I mean, I'd be interested to know what the chief would like to have, though.
Well, it'd be a safer grant because you'd have to pay for the personnel. Mm-hmm. And then it would also have to be an equipment grant to purchase that squad. And then, you know, the grant opportunities only come once a year, and then it takes almost 8 months to be able to realize if you've even received the grant or not. But yeah, if that's a direction that we want to go in, is staffing a squad, then a safer grant would be that would be the avenue for that, or the conduit for it.
And then if you could just throw in there, Steve, just a quick little, or Dr. Hill, just a quick one on just past budgets, including just the what the past budgets were. Those are all digital anyway.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you want grant opportunities? In other words, I have like a 3 or 4 page list of, the different grants that I look at. Does the board want to see that? Are you interested in that, or?
Yeah, I mean,
Throw my opinion out there. I mean, if we're going to have a strategic planning discussion around revenue stream shortfalls, and one of the ways of making up the shortfall is through grants, I'd like to have a better understanding before we make decisions about it as to what the opportunities are and that kind of thing. So my answer to your question would be yes, Chief, but I don't know what everybody else thinks.
yeah, I'd like the same. I agree with that, Urko.
And then I'll give a little synopsis on each one of them on, what they can be used for, or what they, or maybe what they can't be used for.
Okay. Anything else in the possible revenue? Oh,
That'll be in about October by the time I'd be able to get to that.
Good to know. So anything else for possible revenue stream reductions? Okay. Guess well, the next one is probably the most I can call labor intensive. Would be call volume and complexity. This is just a lot of data gathering and pulling together of reports. Yeah, this one's a lot of complexity associated with it. Director Hill, what document was it, or was it Chief Craig that someone was referring to about the City of Hercules' growth and development? Or was it, if it even existed?
Well, I opined, to use Dr. Fauci's favorite term the other day, I opined that the City of Hercules must have projections about the impacts on the city of all the developments they've been pursuing and succeeding in getting, right?
Directors, if I may suggest, it's their general plan, and they would have updated their general plan, including their housing element, last year. So that's a freely available document, obviously, but it's the general plan that you'd probably want to be looking at at first, because that should contain the projections and the development plan for the city, especially in the housing section.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Pierrota. Is there an equivalent for the county? Do we know?
Absolutely. There is a county general plan as well.
Perfect. And that takes care of the town of Rodeo.
And the other thing we would need, I think, for this one would be statistical data. I don't know, we're looking 5 years ahead, right? So I guess 5 years, past 5 years of, call data, numbers, types by year, that kind of thing. So we can assess the change and maybe try and draw some conclusions as to what the future holds.
And all that information is stored by the county, right?
We have that.
Oh, we have that?
I have that at the press of a button.
Okay.
And some, a overview of that is also in your budget.
I mean, I would just be picturing something that I know the chief can get probably relatively easily. Everything's not super easy, but it's almost the push of a button. It's just the 5-year view, sort of almost some graphs on call volume growth and types of call change, that sort of thing.
So you want to you not only just the statistical data, but you want to see that on from an Excel spreadsheet to onto a graph.
Some charts, maybe. I would think some charts would be the most instructional thing for us, backed up by the data.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, what other things can we look at? I mean, Chief Craig, what's your opinion on sort of, we have that Wildan study for us. Do you think that's something that we should look at and review in terms of our responses and areas and response times and whatnot?
You know, there may be some of that data in there. I don't know off the top of my head. I haven't looked at that since we put that one to bed.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing that gave us nightmares. Yeah, I mean, that's just a piece of information for us. It already exists, so I think it's worth it to at least distribute it. It would be the Wildan report.
Some of that may be in the municipal service review. Actually, I think that some of the data is probably in there.
Municipal service review.
Because it focused on East Contra Costa County and ourselves.
Okay. Any other information that we need for this particular section?
That came from LAFCO. That was the LAFCO Municipal Services Review.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess there's, you know, I'm just thinking that I'm just kind of noodling this around a little bit. And I don't know, I'm not expert in this. Maybe other people on the board are, maybe they're not, I'm not sure. But if we were to analyze our call volume, like we just talked about, is there a way for us to help us get our heads around what would be required to support call volume that either we've experienced or that we might project for the next 5 years? I mean, is there some, I don't know, NFPA standard that we could look at, something like that, to help us understand, you know, how many fire companies it might take to support the volume that we anticipate, that sort of thing? But I mean, that's fine, but I'm going to distill that down. Is there something we should ask you for? Is there a chart, a simple chart or something?
I'm holding it up in front of you.
I know, but we're...
That right there. That's what we go by.
Yeah, but how do you help us understand that without becoming experts in that? What should we ask you for?
I can provide it to you. I mean, I'm not sure what more out of it you would want. I mean, Damon's pretty familiar with that document, I'm sure. That's kind of what we kind of
Yes.
live by.
Yep.
What's the formal name for that that book?
NFPA 1710.
Well, that's at the heart of this whole discussion about how we support the anticipated call volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm not smart enough to know what to ask for, but I also know that I'm probably not going to be becoming an expert without somebody's help in that.
You know, everything's based on, you know, it's based on population. It's based on your risk assessment.
I don't know, Chair, is there some expert opinion we should be asking for to give us a presentation or something? I'm not sure what we should, how we get our heads around that.
Well, so the thing that we're trying to answer is what kind of call volume are we going to experience with the new development, whether it be the new construction or the transportation. Is that kind of what the root of the problem is? How do we predict that?
Well, I think that gets us to the point where we are anticipating some kind of change in call volume. I mean, I'm assuming that given all the development we're going to, and the natural growth anyway, we're probably going to have an predict an increase in call volume. But I don't then know how to extrapolate that personally to how many engine companies or what it takes to support that call volume. And that's what could use some help with if we're going to really have a serious conversation about this.
I think it's worth just at least initially, just how many people are we going to have occupying those new units? What kind of population density are we going to experience? And we have those numbers from the city of Hercules. It's sort of the anticipated occupancies for those new apartments, those new, and then the kind of ridership we're expecting with the transportation network. So we can at least get those numbers to get started with that. And then once we know sort of, okay, these are a number of folks that are transient, and these are a number of folks that are not transit, that are, just simply using this as a commuter hub. And then these are the number of people that are occupying and living in those new developments and that sort of thing. Does that NFPA guideline book sort of have an indication? I'm actually going to be buying it myself just so I can have it as a reference. I don't plan to be an expert myself at all by any means, but does it offer guidelines as to apartment complexes with a certain number of units? Or
no, it doesn't get that narrow. It's a little more broad based than that.
What kind of guidelines does they offer compared to, say, because anything short of, we're trying to find
I think we're getting a little too finite.
Yeah.
If we go by the last 10-year trend, we already know that we run 75% medicals. I don't expect that to decrease. So, I think that's going to be continued to be the the bulk of our calls. No matter what the populace is within the new developments.
Yeah, I'm just curious about what kind of environment or what kind of call volume and call types, for example, a transportation hub would cause.
This document doesn't get finite like that. It won't tell you if you have this type of development in your response area that you should have X.
Mm-hmm. And how would we get that kind of information? What questions should we ask?
Just look at what I would do is would be look at like districts
mm-hmm.
and see what they're experiencing. Ones that are already established, possibly newer type communities. It doesn't necessarily have to be in California. It could be someplace else, and take the analysis, statistical analysis from those other communities. That's how all statistical analysis that are done is based on known facts, right? And comparisons.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing we should look at is areas in the East County that have come up with new development that are like multi-unit developments and apartment complexes and that sort of thing. And we can turn to those, not necessarily East County, but like in the Concord.
East County is pretty underserved. I don't know if
sorry. Not them, but I'm just trying to think of places that have newer multi-unit buildings added to them to help us sort of figure out what kind of calls and call volume they're experiencing in those newer unit developments. And then in terms of the transportation part of things, where do we know that had a ferry and a train Amtrak station. I mean, Emeryville comes to mind as an Amtrak station location, and Vallejo, Larkspur are two other places that come to mind.
I was thinking of Alameda also, and the build out of the old Alameda Naval Air Station, and the increase that they went from, almost half of their community being taken up by a military base to being all of a sudden a bedroom community.
Actually, yeah, the Alameda, what's it called? The Naval.
It used to be Alameda Naval Air, but now it's just Alameda. It's part of Alameda.
Okay, yeah, the new development there. I think I remember that. I have a friend who was working on a project out there. But yeah, I think it's worth it. And what I think I'll do is I'll contribute myself and pull up some of the information on these entities to see what's available to share. And I could send it to either Chief or Kim, and they can spread it out or do a BCC. So we can get that piece of information to everyone. Anything else that we can think of that that we need, the information that we need? I apologize. I'm really not feeling too well, so I might be leaving early.
We're already over our time, and we probably should have had a discussion on that. We were going to go past our end of meeting.
Oh, okay. Let's see. What else do we have to still talk about? Well, we went through these items. Let's push through this really. Well, actually, let me get the consensus from the board. Is everyone okay with just pushing through and finishing off the last two pieces?
I've lost track of what they are. I'm looking to see what they are right now.
Yeah.
It's a C and D, discussion regarding in expanding MRG's role and formulate a schedule future strategic planning workshops.
That's another hour.
Exactly. I'm wondering, could we make those part of our board meeting agenda?
I'm okay with that.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yep.
I get someplace I have to be in 29 minutes, actually.
Ooh.
I've got a crew waiting on me right now.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm okay with pushing off the last C and D into our regular board meeting for August. I think I have it for August 12th. Not August 12th. I'm in May. Sorry. Well, whatever the second Wednesday in August is.
August the 12th, you're correct.
Oh, wow. Ooh, my calendar was in May. I don't know how that worked. But okay. So, yeah, I'm okay with that if everyone else is.
Yes.
Perfect. Director Prather, are you okay with that? Well, we have a majority consensus. So.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn this workshop. It is 12:32 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good day and have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Great meeting.